Hello and welcome to Honest Faith Conversations. As always, I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I'm Kathy Covarrubias, and today we're going to be talking about the Netflix series, The OA.
So, about the OA, it is, well, like she said, it's available on Netflix, and a lot of people have been drawing parallels with the OA and one of 2016's breakout hits from Netflix, Stranger Things. Now, we were originally going to be talking about Stranger Things on this podcast until we actually binge-watched the OA, and I felt there were a lot... This kind of can segue into a lot of the things that they were doing in Stranger Things. But with that being said, massive spoiler alert warning here. There is, we're going to be talking about the entire series as a whole.
Yes.
So that is, there's a lot in there. And so, granted, some of these things will be just a spoiler for episode 1, but I would suggest that you go and watch the show.
Yes.
It's on Netflix. If you have eight hours to spare, it will take up all of your 8 hours.
Yeah,
so,
but it'll be a very enjoyable 8 hours.
Yeah, it was very good. Yeah, I have to say that the storytelling, in particular, was fantastic, and I want to spend a few moments talking about the storytelling because I think it's very much integral to what I want to talk about in the faith aspect of it.
Okay.
With that being said, to human beings, we've always placed a really big importance on narrative, and I think that narrative is very much essential to our faith upbringing, to our...
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, going back to... the ancient times, people would just sit around the campfire and pass down stories. The Old Testament, for example, wasn't written down until much, much later. Most of those stories before were just, kind of word of mouth.
Well, obviously, this is not what the show is about, but I do want to make sure that we talk about storytelling because it is also integral to the plot of the show.
Like legit storytelling.
Well, and that's essentially what the theme of the show is kind of about. Is about sharing your story, and I think it's a way of coping with things, and we'll get to that here in a second. But it's their narrative thread. They do a very good job of weaving it through together. That the entire tapestry of this season. I don't know if they're going to be doing another season or not. But,
they better be doing another season.
that this thread was very well woven into and out of every single story that these characters endure. That it's kind of in there. That this takes one of the tropes of the disappeared person's story archetype. That's the word I was looking for. The disappeared person archetype, where they've been
gone for a long
time, and then they return, whether it's they were taken or they ran away or whatever. It has that trope, and when they come back, they've got something different about them. Whether it be that pain from their abduction, or they've got a new special power they learned from somewhere, or whatever.
Or they come back they're legit not the same person.
Yes.
Because they're just like a transplant. But anyway, that's just an example.
But they do a very good job of sowing the seeds of doubt throughout the entire show. Mm-hmm. There are things in every single episode that kind of make you doubt the main character's story, and not so much that you're actually completely taken out of the story.
No. Because her story, even if it's not true, is still a good story.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is that they sow the little seeds of doubt throughout the show. I mean, even in the first episode, you have the mother who says
Nancy,
who says to her, when you were learning to walk, you became so confident that you ran into a wall, and I knew that you were my daughter. Which, you know, there's a whole story about an adoption and being born elsewhere, into that those aren't her real parents, and so that's one of those things that, you know, plants that seed of doubt in your mind. Is that, wait a second, didn't she just say, kind of thing? In each episode, they have something else that kind of throws you a little bit there. But we'll talk about that here in a minute.
And the parents never talk about the adoption. Well, no, they do. They do at the end. Because she says, I chose her. You wanted a little boy, but I chose her.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And she talks about the adoption in her own story when she's talking to everyone else. That brings me to my next point on this, is that the symbology in this was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I think that it was very well layered. It wasn't hit you over the head with the symbology of it. Mm-mm. In fact, one of the things that I was thinking about last night when I woke up in the middle of the night to feed our son was that the five listeners who come to listen to the main character's story, that they're representative of the 5 stages of grief. I mean, I didn't think about it until last night, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh my goodness, they are. I mean, Steve is anger. You have Betty, Elizabeth, who is depression. Mm-hmm. You have Alfonso, who is denial. You have Buck, who is bargaining. Mm-hmm. And I'm still a little iffy on Jesse being acceptance, because he was very, very accepting of everybody in the entire show, and he was the one that was kind of pushing everybody else to be accepting of others.
And I think he was kind of pushing others to believe her story too. I remember a few scenes when he was just like, no, this is her story, like, this is real.
Yeah, and I think that this is integral to the entire theme of the show, that symbology of it, because I think that I didn't put this in here, but I think that the theme of the show is about coping. Mm-hmm. It is about coping with the things that happen to us. Because they show scenes with her and the counselor from the FBI. They show this entire thing is about the narrative, and that her getting her narrative out helps her to open up as a person, helps her to come back, as it were. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you see that throughout the show. The more that she tells her story, the more that she becomes an actual character, that she's fully fleshed out, that she's not just very two-dimensional as she is in the very beginning of the show. And they do a very good job of doing that throughout this entire thing. The NDEs, which are near-death experiences, which is another big part of the show. Mm-hmm. These, I
mean, the 5 angels all have that, so that's why it's important.
Well, they have a very big, important symbology within them. They're very symbolic of how the characters, the angels, view the afterlife. And you only get to view 3 of these throughout the entire show. Mainly, it's in Prairie, the OA's, NDEs, near-death experiences.
No, 4, because we see Homer too.
Well, you see Homer's, you see hers, and you see Scott's. Those are the only 3
gotcha.
that you see.
I thought you meant like each individual event. No, sorry.
No, each one is very representative of the way they view the afterlife. They talk about the afterlife in the show a little bit, and we'll get on to that here in another section. But in the NDEs, they're very symbolic of the way that people view them. Like, for instance, Homer's, he's running away. It's dirty. It's disgusting. It's kind of his view of hell.
Yeah.
It's
almost like an institution thing.
Yeah, and I mean, as an athlete, that's kind of his view of hell. In the OAs in Prairies, it's very
Well,
idyllic, heaven-esque.
yeah, like the colors are very vivid. I mean, her surroundings are just picturesque. They don't look real. Like you can tell, like it's not like an actual like place here on Earth. But that might also be because when she first entered, like she first had her first near-death experience is when she was a child. Mm-hmm. So maybe she's just kind of taking that with her each time she goes into the near-death experience.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is that these are all symbolic of their views, mm-hmm. and so that adds to those seeds of doubt kind of thing a little bit. Then you also have the sounds. The sounds are very important throughout the show, which I think was fantastic. I don't know if it was product placement or not, but that YouTube was kind of put in throughout the show.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Especially when they were looking for sounds and they were looking for different things to show somebody else, as they bring up a YouTube video.
Yeah, or like to prove that her story was true, they find this YouTube video.
Yeah. And so that in itself was symbolic. Each of those sounds were symbolic, and especially for Dr. Hep, mm-hmm. the abductor.
Because that's the only way he can experience
the
near-death experiences.
Was, for the sounds of Saturn, Saturn's rings, and that's where he believed that they went. And anyway, the storytelling, that piece of it, that's what I wanted to talk about, was because I think that the storytelling is very much a big part of this, and very much why I enjoyed it was because the storytelling was very rich. Mm-hmm.
And I think like I liked it because the storytelling also brought parts, like good storytelling will bring a little bit of reality into a world of fantasy, which is what I like. Yeah.
And the show borrowed very heavily from religion.
Oh, yeah.
From a lot of different religions.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, what's funny is that we have, as a Western world, we have a very big obsession with Eastern religion. We talked about this in our Star Wars episode, mm-hmm. and it's very evident in this one. They did their research. They did a lot of research for Russian Orthodox. You have a lot of kind of the Russian Orthodox symbology within this. There's also some Hindu and I can't think of it. What I'm going for, but
I don't know. I'm trying to read your mind, and nothing's coming.
Yeah, Buddhist ideals there, and I'll come back to that here in a second. But her main idea in the show is that that they were angels. That those who have had near-death experiences, the reason why they can continue to have near-death experiences and be brought back. Mm-hmm. It's very much like the 80s movie, or was it in the 80s? Maybe 90s, movie Flatliners. Where
I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm sure it's a thing.
it has Kiefer Sutherland in it. It has Julia Roberts in it.
Sounds very 90s.
It was Kevin Bacon in it? Maybe. If it was in the 90s, it was probably Kevin Bacon. And I'm probably completely putting Kevin Bacon in the wrong movie there, but
it's okay. It was a while ago, anyway.
Where they intentionally flatline themselves. They intentionally stop their hearts so that they could come back, and there is a nod to that in the show, and it's one of those blink and you'll miss it kind of things where Homer's playing back a recording from Hep, who is talking about why he's doing this, and he talks about. Back before that, we believe that when you stop the heart, that's when death occurred, and then when brain activity ceased, that's when death occurred. But that was kind of the whole premise of the entire movie. With Flatliners, was that if you stop the heart, you're dead, and you can experience heaven and all this other stuff, and then you just restart the heart within 5 minutes.
But Hep knows that. Well, the kidnapper, the scientist, the doctor, whatever you want to call him, psychopath. He his whole thing is proving that almost as if there is no death. Like, you don't stop living. Like, you just keep going.
Yeah. Getting a little ahead of ourselves, but the spiritual beings piece of it, and they this will be a big spoiler here. At the very end, is Alfonso is looking for proof that this stuff kind of happened to Prairie, and he breaks into their house, and he goes up to her room, and he finds underneath her bed is this box of books. And each book is kind of representative of her story, of her larger story or narrative there. And I'll come back.
In an Amazon box, by the way. So she had to have purchased this like recently, because Amazon wasn't a thing in the 90s when she disappeared.
Well, this was supposedly 7 years ago, and it takes place in modern day. So it's 2016 in the show.
I don't. Her outfit though.
Yeah, 2009. Amazon was a thing. So.
I still don't know. Like, I'm just saying, outfits, they seemed more 90s to me.
Yeah, but it's because
or maybe
she was
like
in
early 2000s.
Upper Midwest.
Well,
you could tell that they were in the Upper Midwest.
Yeah, but what about her computer? She had an Apple, like one of those old-fashioned, like, Apple computers with like the different colors.
Yeah, but that was her computer from before she went away.
Yeah,
which was 7.5 years before she came back.
But I'm just saying those computers are older than just 7.5 years.
No, I know, and it's kind of hard to retrofit those computers for the blind for them to be able to be accessible, especially with the internet and the way that it was being used. It was definitely within the time frame. So,
well, I don't know. I still think that there's some timeline issues going on, but that's just me. Anyway, continuing, we'll move on. Sorry, listeners.
But anyway, one of the books that he picked up was a book on angels, and so he believes that they were just making this up, and we'll get to this part in the controversial issues section too. But that the idea of angels has always been a captivating one for human beings throughout history. We've had since the Bible kind of talks about within the Old Testament, you have the Spirit of the Lord. In the New Testament, they actually say angels or other things like this. You have an extra canonical book, which is very, very large into the mythos of that the Old Testament borrows heavily from. It's called the Book of Enoch, which tells about the backstories of all the angels of. Especially ones like Metatron, and he is not a transformer, but Metatron and...
These names should be sounding familiar to you if you are big fans.
Supernatural.
Yeah, if you're big fans of Supernatural, you'll know these names.
Dogma, or anything else like that. But these are things that they were included in that book, which the Bible references, but it's not actually included in the Bible because Ignatius thought it was very out there, and you shouldn't put it in the Bible.
But I want to bring up too that angels aren't just like in Christianity; like they're a big part of the Jewish tradition. They're a big part of. I know that a lot of. I just can't think today, guys. I've had too much caffeine. But anyway, other religions also reference angels.
Yes.
That's my point.
Then brings us to the next thing, which is the afterlife. The afterlife is very, very heavy in this show, and that's what the near-death experiences are, is that he's trying to get a view of the afterlife. There is a scene where she's telling the story about Hap, that Hap had another person, but that this other person was trying to do some of the same experiments that Hap was. And they're talking about the afterlife, and they're both trying to prove that the afterlife exists, that there is not just this life, that there is life beyond death. And that has been one of humanity's biggest questions for a long time. I mean, even if you're atheist, even if you don't believe in a God, you believe that there is something else out there, that our energy just doesn't stop. there are some atheists who do believe that this life, this existence, is all that there is. There are a lot of those different beliefs and different religions that kind of talk about that. But within the show, the idea is that the afterlife isn't here, but it's one of the biggest. Now, this will go into the controversial issue section, but one of the biggest things about the afterlife is that it's not just this reality, that there are parallel realities, that when you have that near-death experience or you die, that you end up in another parallel reality. I mean, this is one of the biggest parallels with Stranger Things, because Stranger Things has that alternate dimension kind of thing going on.
Yep, the underneath, or
the underneath, the other side,
underworld.
Yeah,
I can't remember, but anyway.
But those allegories with the afterlife and the Stranger Things are a lot more subtle than here. This one is pretty much about that. But this is a big thing in this story, and I think that they brought up some big, kind of good questions about the afterlife, and I think that I think it's important for us as a society to talk about the afterlife, what happens after death, because we are so afraid of death. And we talked about this before in the Star Wars episode, is that we're so afraid of death that we do all these things out of fear that end up hurting each other, that end up hurting, all other life. I'll come back to this, but I think that it's a good representation of that conversation, of that desire to want to know more about the afterlife. Then we also have a representation of God, maybe, in Khatun. I don't know if Khatun was supposed to be another angel, or if Khatun was supposed to be a God figure.
I'm not sure. Like, I think I can see where you're saying where she may be a god, because like she's looking over, because the scenes when you see her, like she's looking over into this pool, and if you look into this pool, like the colors themselves are very representative of Earth. It's blue and green, and she's looking down on it. So maybe she is God because she's looking down at that. That seems like very like God symbolism to me. But then when she basically is telling OA that she is an angel, or giving her a clue that she's an angel, she like pulls back her cloak and there's an angel wing.
Yeah. Well, but I just wanted to say something about that, is that the show name, that put a big seed of doubt in my mind in the second to last episode when she's explaining what the OA is the original angel.
Yeah.
That took me out of it a second, because I'm like, seriously?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. How original.
Yeah. Instead of the OG, she's the OA. That seemed like the worst part of the pitch for the entire show. But
you know what? That just goes back into what we were talking about with doubt.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it did put that big point in there for me. So I think that you're right on that. So, the show also, we talked about this before so many times, especially in the Walking Dead episode when we talked about individuality, kind of the death of individuality. This is a very modern piece of television.
Yes.
Is that it is not an individual there. It very much relies on the group, the cohesiveness of the group, the community, which is why I brought it up in the original storytelling. Is she's telling the story to a group, and the 5 stages of grief thing is that it's group therapy for her. It's telling her story to people, and the more you tell your story, the more you get it out there. And I think that's very much in the show, is that everything is connected, that everything is kind of, we're all a part of each other. And I wanted to read something out of this book by Martin Bell. It's called The Way of the Wolf. It's a kind of a reimagining of Jesus' parables in the Gospels, which there's this beautiful one in there. I highly recommend picking up this book. I think it is out of print now, but I'm sure you can find it on Amazon. I did a few years ago. It was like $6.
Apparently, it used
Pick
to
it up.
belong to a gym.
I did belong to a gym before. But as part of the Sunday school curriculum that I used before, it required this story to be read in particular. And I love this segment. This is out of one of the stories called What the Wind Said to Tajir. And this is the story about a little boy who loves the wind. And he always goes out to listen to the wind. And one day the wind decided to talk to him. And the wind imparts a few secrets to Tajir, and this is one of them. All right. He says, "All right then, here is another secret that is almost as important as the first. Regardless of what anyone else may ever tell you, regardless even of what your own experience may lead you to believe, you are everyone who ever was, and everyone who ever will be. You are the whole of creation, past, present, and future. Decisions that you make today in what is called the here and now will validate or invalidate everything that has gone before and make possible or impossible everything that is to come. Anything that hurts anyone hurts you. Anything that helps anyone helps you. It is not possible to gain from another's loss or to lose from another's gain. Your life is immensely important. Everything depends upon you. Tajir, do you understand this, or is it too difficult?"
Wow.
And there's another section here. This is the end of the story where Tajir's mother is reading him a bedtime story about elephants. And after the story, this is what Tajir says. Tajir said it was most important to remember that whatever hurt the elephants hurt him, and that whatever helped the elephants helped him. He added that at the center of things, life belonged to life, and this meant that he and the elephants shared in the same experience and were somehow unified with one another. He went on to say that it was good to be an elephant, and it was good to be Tajir. Which, the very first thing that the wind says to Tajir is life belongs to life. That's the very first secret, and he goes on to explain it a little bit. But I think that I wanted to bring that up here in talking about this show because I think this was very much part of Prairie's story, was that all of the angels were connected. That no matter what they did, she felt it. And no matter, even what Hap did, that she felt it. Is that all life was connected to life. And I think this borrows heavily from a lot of religions. This is the golden rule, and this is like the main rule of every religion. Pretty much is do unto others as you would have them do to you, and I think that is hugely important to this and to everybody's life.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you have no moral code, I think that is essential to you, that there is something in you that knows when you are harming another, that you are harming yourself, or when you're doing something good to somebody else, that you are doing good to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I would say that short-term mission trips were important, was because even if you're not really doing a whole lot, even if you're just helping to build a house somewhere, or if you're helping to
paint a deck.
Yeah, paint a deck, or to serve at a food kitchen somewhere, is that you're doing something to help somebody else, but in that you're also helping yourself. As if you've ever done something good like that, you feel it, you know it, and even if you're doing it for selfish reasons, it doesn't matter because it's getting done.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of key to the story, and also to our lives, to everybody's story. And I think it's key to this as well. What do you think? Am I just talking way too much on this?
No, I agree. I also think that when you I was thinking about it, and I think that there's probably more parallels between the 5 in Prairie's story and the 5 that she's telling the story to. I think part of the reason why she's so connected with Steve, maybe because she sees herself in Steve somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely sure how. Maybe we'll see that in like the next season. I'm not sure because he seems very angry, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just going out there, but...
Well, at first she sees Homer in him. And that's what she says in the video.
Oh, yeah.
I think that she does... Well, she sees herself in all of them, I think. And that's because of the stages of grief. Is I think that the way that she meets them, the way that they kind of, interact with her, is they're taking her through the stages of grief as well to kind of come to terms with where she's at now.
Yeah.
Whether or not she's dead in the end of the series, that still remains to be seen. But...
I don't know. I mean, she was shot in the heart, it looked like to me. So, and the fact that she was still talking, pretty clearly, not just, kind of muttering, but she was, actually having a conversation as she's being willed away. I don't know. That seems kind of strange to me. So maybe she is an angel. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we know that the second movement heals, so...
Yes. So are you going to move on to now the controversial issues?
Yes, and this is a tough one for me because this is something that I want to talk about because it's close to me because it's one where I feel like many people will write me off as a nutcase for saying this or to say that I'm heretical because of this, but something that I really believe that I know to be true is that we are both physical and spiritual beings. That this show really resonated with me because in her story, I think that was the biggest part of it was interacting of the two was both physical and spiritual. That the physical was the movements and the spiritual was the near-death experiences and what they represented and the things that they could do. Mm-hmm. And I think that there are things that our spirit selves can do that our physical beings aren't as capable of, and I think that's what a lot of people are attribute to the power of prayer and stuff like this. But I think it's more or less it's that somebody spiritually was able to reach out and do something about something or other. Mm-hmm. And this, I know it's a completely out there idea. I know it's kind of one of those things that is controversial, and I think that, but I know it to be true because of the things that I've seen. I also do believe that purely spirit beings exist too. I do believe that angels and demons exist. That somebody was having an internet conversation, was having a Facebook conversation about do people believe that evil beings exist, that evil spiritual beings exist? And I don't think it's as simple to say that they're purely evil. I have had interactions with evil spirits before. And that can be a completely different show. But I have evidential proof in my own life of having interactions with these things, and completely terrifying. Still to this day, I mean, you can attest to it. When we first started dating, we went to go see Paranormal Activity in the theaters. I didn't sleep for a week afterward.
Yeah.
Because it's some of the things that happened in the movie happened to my family, to me, and those things were. I mean, it's hard for me to say that no, they were just psychosomatic or something else like that. They were just figments of my imagination. It was and so I think that this has a lot to do with my idea of the afterlife. Is that I do believe that the afterlife, that heaven and hell and our physical reality all kind of occupy the same space. Mm-hmm. Just like in Stranger Things, they kind of occupy the same space. They're just on the underside or on another side of things. And that's why I think that the near-death experiences, why they're being used as their ideas of what heaven and hell are, that's important too to the story, because I think that's ultimately what that is what heaven and hell is. It's kind of another side of reality, another perspective on reality. And this is something that I brought up before with the final battle with anonymous Christianity and those things that C.S. Lewis brings up in that book. A lot of people don't like the final battle. Granted, as a story, it's not a very good story, but he does bring up a lot of good questions about Christianity in that book.
Well, I don't know, I read it and it seemed more of a like his own passion piece. You know what I mean? Like this is something like he wanted to get out. So
yeah, exactly.
He wasn't necessarily like focused too much on the story. It was more like, I just need to word vomit all of this and have it be out there in the world.
And I need to kill off all my characters in a way. So I'm going to kill off all my characters. This was his George R.R. Martin moment before George R.R. Martin began writing books.
I don't know. At least, I mean, the difference is George R.R. Martin, like kills people, like, here or there, like, throughout the story.
Yeah.
That's a little different than, like, and everybody dies.
Well, and I think that he wanted to talk about the afterlife, his views on the afterlife. And I love C.S. Lewis for a lot of the things that he thought about. If you go into C.S. Lewis's story, he often refers to himself as the most reluctant Christian. Was that he was brought to Christianity kicking and screaming by J.R.R. Tolkien. By the way, huge fan of the Inklings. I think I said this in the first podcast, but so I can go on and on about the Inklings. And
sorry, I'm just laughing because there's a story. We'll tell you guys later, but
I think you did. You told it in the first one where I stole a glass from.
Yes.
I tried to pay for it, but anyway, that brings us to. We were talking about the afterlife, and I think that brings us to our next controversial issue, which is the NDEs with near-death experiences.
Because there have been phonies out there.
There have been phonies out there, and I also think that there are big issues with near-death experiences. Is that some people don't believe that they actually exist. Some people believe that they are issues with the brain misfiring upon the moment of death. In fact, some people believe that the entire story of Grease is a near-death experience. That's why they're flying off in the car in the end, is because she's actually dying, and this whole thing is made up in her head. Anyway, but near-death experiences are a controversial issue. But I also have friends who work in hospice, and they tell me that there are some things that they can't refute. That at the very end of people's lives, that they say things or they see things that they have no reason of actually having knowledge of or of seeing them there. One of my favorite stories about this is there is a short story that I wrote a few years ago about. I should put that somewhere. I don't remember where I put that, but I wrote the short story.
Physically, you don't know where you put it?
Yeah, I don't know where I stored the story. But I wrote a short story about this, and I was kind of imagining the afterlife. I was imagining an old woman and her near-death experience of experiencing this connectedness of everything and everybody. And there was a piece that Donald Miller wrote in, I think, Blue Like Jazz, talking about how he went to a funeral and he was talking with somebody. And they had said, one of the great things about heaven is that we are already there. Is that we are fully spirit in the afterlife, and I think that that's what it is that we are fully spirit, that we are outside of time at that time. Is that we are at that time. that doesn't make any sense. But we are completely outside of time, that we are already there on the other side. We are already connected with everything and everybody. That brings a lot of comfort to me, because I had a dear friend who passed away a few years ago. And she's kind of the reason why Kathy and I are together. And I often have conversations with her when because she was a good friend that always knew how to kind of get at the root of the problem. She had this uncanny ability of being able to just like stare straight into your soul and tell you exactly what you needed to hear at the exact time you needed to hear it.
Yeah.
And that's why I often have conversations with her now, is because I know that she still exists somewhere, that I am still connected to her somehow, because I'm already there with her on the other side. And I think that's what a lot of these near-death experiences are, connecting fully with our spirit self. But that's a controversial issue.
Yeah, I mean, because that kind of borderlines on, like, the spiritualist.
Yeah.
And a lot of, especially the conservative Christian community, is very, like, butting heads with spiritualists because they feel like spiritualism is, like, too close to the occult.
Yeah. And our last controversial issue, which we need to get to quickly because we're running out of time, is the validity of the story. And this is a big thing, is that Alfonso, as Doubt, was bringing it up with the group, is that her story wasn't real because of these books. And
well, he's the academic of the group, so he's constantly looking for like validation in things. He's constantly, looking to see the proof.
Exactly, and that's one of the biggest things. There's a trope that has been coming up in movies a lot. In fact, some of the big ones like Bigger Fish and Secondhand Lions, and all of these things that kind of bring up the validity, that it doesn't matter if the story is true or not. What matters is the story. What matters is what you got from the story, is what you take away from the story. And that's, I think, what we talk about in this podcast, is kind of talking about these things and what we took away from the story. And in this, I think we took away a lot of comfort. And, so any final thoughts? Got to be quick.
Yeah, just real quick on what you're talking about with the validity of the story, and make it, like, it doesn't necessarily matter if the story is real or not. That's kind of how I see the stories in the Bible. Like, a lot of people are very, like, no, everything in the Bible is true. Me, I believe that probably most of the stuff in the Bible didn't really happen. However, that does not make it any less important, because the stories still show and still kind of guide the way that I should be living.
I think so. Again, I just wanted to remind you all that you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Tumblr. You can also make sure to email us at honestfaithconvos@gmail.com. Again, we've also set up a Google Voice number that you can give us a call and add your voice to the podcast and join the conversation, which that phone number is 720-372-3879. All right, and we will talk to you soon. And please come and join the conversation.